My face is shiny.
Okay.
Okay.
And starting. So, what's going on, everyone? Mickey Miller in the house here with Willow Winters.
Hi,
And
everybody.
awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk about a little bit of dark romance and just pick Willow's brain here about everything she's done in the last couple of years. I'm super excited.
I'm excited too.
So, yeah, what's going on, Willow? How are you doing today?
I'm doing phenomenal. I just got edits back on Scarred, so I'm really excited. I have to go one more round of edits, and then I can send it off to the ARC team and just hold my breath until it goes live. So I'm that anxious, relieved, bubbly state right now.
Yeah, it's always a good feeling when you're finally done.
Yeah.
Or
Well, it's kind of good, but it's also kind of terrifying because now I'm like, well, now other people have to read this. So, hopefully it's good. We'll see. So, one beta reader down. I have four to go, and then an entire ARC team. So, hopefully they like
yeah,
it.
so you have four beta readers.
Yep, I have four beta readers, four editors, and they get it at the same time. And then the ARC team gets it afterwards. And I've heard back from, one beta reader, another messaged me today that she's through it, and the other two were starting today. So I'll see what they have to say and do this last round of edits. And hopefully they don't have anything negative to say or anything that's too big to fix. If they do, then I won't have the anxious, bubbly feeling. It'll be the horrified, oh my God
Yeah, that's
feeling
always tough when you got to go back and uh,
and fix something.
shift
Yeah.
stuff around.
Yeah.
So, anyways, today we're gonna start. This is gonna be the second episode of podcast. So I think people are
Yay.
pretty pumped.
And what's it
Um,
called?
Writers talk romance.
I love that. That's a good
Yeah,
title.
yeah. So I mean, we're gonna have a lot of romance writers on here, but who
Mhm.
knows? Maybe we'll branch off at some time. But so I want to just start off by asking you the question. I'm just really curious. I mean, we've met. We Willow and I, for
We
everyone
did.
listening, we met at Romance Writers of America last summer in person, which was pretty fun.
It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was really excited.
yeah, in magical Orlando.
Yeah. I was kind of
uh,
terrified before going, but
yeah,
being there was really wonderful and getting to actually meet people.
yeah. You know what's funny? You always say you're terrified. You were eight. You were super bubbly throughout. But also, I
Well,
always hear that from so many authors and readers alike, and they're like, "Oh
yeah.
my gosh, this conference is like stressful." They're like pumped to go, but also stressed.
I think we're all
Um,
introverts a little
right?
bit.
Yeah,
Like
I
we have an
think.
extroverted sense to us, but definitely introverts.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah, somebody was just saying how it helps us to write our stories and come up with stories, but being an introvert helps that.
Yeah, I think introvert by nature. I think you're kind of if you're a little more introverted, you're led to writing and stuff. You're just introspective.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, conference. It's a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was.
I'm excited for next year.
I
Um,
was just thinking about RT. That's going to be awesome.
yeah, RT in Reno next year.
Reno. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. You signed up. I signed up too. Cool.
I signed up. Yep.
All
And
right.
RWA. I'm going to do it all. Why
Yeah,
not?
yeah. A lot of cool stuff. So for everyone out there, definitely go to some in person conferences next year.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a blast. So. But the first question I want to ask, and like I said, we talked about this a little bit, but I think I'd love to hear it and just go a little bit more in depth and just kind of know what's your story? How did you, um,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, get started and just give a little background on that.
Well, it started technically around 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years. Hold on. I have to do math. Um, was it 5 years? Yeah, well, a little over 5 years now. Is it 6 years? 5 or 6 years ago, I was in the PhD program at the university of my state, and I was going for neuroscience. And I had been there at that specific lab for 3 years. I was a lab manager before being a PhD student, and I had it. I had reached my breaking point. I was engaged at the time. We were talking about having children during my fourth year of the doctorate, which would have meant that I would have been pregnant when doing my dissertation. And I was working 60 hours a week, 7 days a week. I was exhausted. I was still doing lab management activities while also having to handle classes, and running experiments. And it just got to be very overwhelming. And I sat back and I thought, is this making sense? Because I wanted to stay home with the kids. I worked with developmental neurobiology. So I have very strong opinions about how I wanted to raise my kids, and I wanted to be there with them. And so did Sean, at the time my fiance, but now husband. And it didn't make sense for me to kill myself for 4 years, to be unhappy, and to basically throw my career in the toilet by taking time off. So I quit, and it was probably one of the lowest points of my life. I was like super unhappy. I was doing nothing. I went from being like the smart person to what is she doing like with her life, kind of. And we weren't even married yet.
Like who was like, was that from your colleagues or your coworkers, or like, what are you
from
doing?
Everybody. Well, after that, I became a stay-at-home mom, and like a few people have said, "Oh, I forgot you were smart," when having a conversation. Like there's definitely a stigma against stay-at-home moms, but I did it because of the knowledge that I had and because of the ways that I wanted to do it. But I was just very low and very hard on myself, which I think I am in general and still am. And my friend Natalie, who's actually my ex-boyfriend's sister, came over, and I had jury duty to top it all off, like the cherry on my shit pie. And she said, while you're there, you should read this book.
And you already had a child at this point?
No.
Or you didn't? Okay, you didn't.
Nope, no kid. Just literally just alone in a house, depressed and thinking that I might have just destroyed my career. Not even married yet, and we had bought our house, so we had bills, and it was just. It was like not the best time of my life, but I was making a decision to protect my happiness and to be happy moving forward and to make the right decision for years down the line, basically. So my friend comes over and she's like, hey, read this book. And I was like, okay, what is it? And she said, it's called 50 Shades of Grey. I was like, okay. Like she's the same person who gave me Just Listen by Sarah, is it Dessen? Which is young adult. She gave me Certain Girls by Jennifer Weiner, not Weiner. But really good like chick lit and young adult books. So I was not expecting smut. And it was my first time reading smut. So I'm sitting in a jury room with all these people waiting and hoping that I don't get picked. And I start reading it, and that's when I realized, what it was. And I was kind of embarrassed. I look up and ladies were watching me. I was in a bubble, I was only working. And I didn't realize what it was. I also didn't know it was a cliffhanger. But then I was at this low point. I read straight through the trilogy, cried my eyes out at the end of the first one because I didn't know it was a trilogy. And then after I was done, I was like, I could do this. And so just to distract myself and just, be happy, I wrote a story. And I didn't know what to do with it. And my friend Samir said, you can always publish in Kindle Unlimited. It's I heard it's super easy. So I made a cover on Photoshop with my face. It took me about 2 minutes to make. It was horrible. The book.
Wait, you made a cover with your face on it?
Yeah, I have my face on it. The first book I ever wrote. Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Did you have any paperbacks made of that? Or?
I do. I have a paperback
the special
somewhere
edition.
around here. It's in the bottom of a box in a closet. It's really bad. My grandmother has a signed copy, and she loves it. Yeah. But yeah, it didn't do anything, and it ended on a cliffhanger, and I had a Word doc of the second part of it just sitting on my computer, but I got pregnant, and there's a miscarriage that happens in it, and it was right after she miscarried, and I was like, well, I'm not touching this while I'm pregnant. Guess I'll see you later type of a deal. And years went by, and I didn't touch it. Nothing ever happened with it, never made any money on it. It was just something that I did just because I was at a point in my life where I was in limbo. So then I had my son, And then I got pregnant with my daughter. And when I was pregnant with her, I swear she's going to be drama because all I did was read romance novels. I read a novel a day. I was hooked on them. I couldn't not read. And it was all I wanted to do was just read romance novels. And then I had her, and babies are very particular about like sleeping. She would only sleep if I had her right here on my chest. She had to be upright on this angle, would not sleep unless it was like that, but I can't sleep like this. So I found myself just like this with my laptop propped up on pillows, and I used to read on my laptop as well. Even though I have a Kindle, I had apps for my son on my Kindle, so I had the Read Cloud on my computer. But I didn't want to read anymore. Every time I started to read, I would feel like, I could write something. And I remember back when I had published that book and didn't even put any time or effort into it, that I made a few bucks. We were broke. I had mom guilt for being at home and not bringing in money. And I thought, let me make my own money, and we can go to Dunkin' Donuts every day. I can get a coffee. I'll get my son hash browns, and then we can go to the park, and it's not going to be like something that I feel guilty about, and I can like do it all. And I started writing, and I started taking it seriously and started putting more time. Every nap time, it became, what am I going to do? I tried to learn how to make my own covers, and it took me a long time to realize that that is not what I was meant to do. And I should not make my own covers. I should have somebody else do it. And I spent time learning little things here and there and picking up things, and it all just snowballed really quickly into something really wonderful. So that's how it started. Yeah.
Wow, that's like a lot to unpack there. First of all, I mean,
I know. Yeah.
just
A
from
lot
the
of emotional
yeah, I
things
mean,
into it. Yeah.
just from the beginning to, I mean, thinking about, I mean, that must have been a tough decision because that's to just leave like a PhD program in like,
Yeah.
I,
And I was salutatorian in high school. I was like
mhm,
all honors, AP. I was going to be done college in 3 years with a BS in biology. I added on a BA in neuroscience. I was like a smarty
yeah,
pants, and that was my identity. So when I quit the PhD program and I'm just Sean's fiance, it literally, like, my entire identity shifted. And then I was just Jax's mom. And, so I didn't really have a good grip on my identity, but I knew I was doing what I wanted to do for my family, and I was doing what would make me happy later on. So I just stuck with it.
wow, yeah, that's a really, I'm honestly, I'm like a little bit uh, floored that you were able to make that decision at like also like a young age too.
Age. A
Like
lot of people
that's,
make that decision in their like 50s, their 40s and 50s, when they realize they don't want this career anymore, and they drop it and start doing what they've wanted to do. And that was one of the things I was thinking about is, I'm throwing my career away by being a stay-at-home mom anyway. I would have done all of that work literally. Like in the science field, it moves so quickly that if you choose to take time off, you fall behind very quickly. And it was just something that it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it to continue moving in a career and in a direction that didn't match what I wanted later on. And this career is obviously a blessing because I can do everything at home with my kids. And, I didn't know that this was an option. I had no idea what I would do once my kids moved on and I had to actually get a job again. I had no idea what I would do, and I just didn't think about it because I just wanted to focus on what I knew would make me happy at the time and make me feel good about the decisions that I made. Yeah.
yeah, that's, I'm I was impressed when you told this story
Thank
at
you.
RWA, and it's just very, like, I commend you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And I also, one of the other thing when you tell a story that I think about, like, I'm sure you have to have like a picture somewhere of you with baby on your, on your
Yeah.
chest, and you're just like writing, and that's like
Yeah.
one of those.
I took a selfie once. It
Did
was
you?
like this. And I did. Yeah.
Isn't that
So
like,
I have it there somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, that's just like a classic that you'll show your kids someday and they'll be like, just,
Yeah.
just like one of those blow away photos. Isn't there a picture? There's like a famous
I was,
picture of Stephen King like that. It's like that.
yeah.
But,
I was just
um,
talking to Ella James, and she said that when she was writing, when she started and she had her daughter, the only way she would go to sleep is the same way that Evie would go to sleep. And her daughter, when she finally putting her to her room, didn't realize that people go to sleep with the lights off, because she'd never gone to sleep with the lights off. It had always been the computer light on and in her face. So she had no idea, and it was new to her. So,
Oh
so I'm
my
not the
gosh.
only one who has done that.
Huh.
Yeah. But I thought that was really funny. With Evie, it wasn't that long. It was only a few months or so, probably like 6 months before she would actually go down and stay down and
Okay.
be happy in her crib. But for a while and for the beginning, I typed like this. And for nap times, just because that was more me though. I didn't want to go up there and put her in her crib. I figured I might as well cuddle her while she's napping.
That's so cute. I'm like a little bit jealous, but I mean, I'll have kids someday. But that's like super. That's
Yeah.
just like have a kid. My one of my best friends, who obviously I'm 30 years old, gonna be 31 tomorrow. But
Happy early birthday.
yeah. But no, well, I just remember one of my friend that he's like this huge guy. He's like 6'6", like played tight end in college football and stuff, and he was just telling it. He was like just kept saying like he's just obsessed with his daughter, which is
Yeah.
great. But he just has this. I went over there for it's
Little
like the
tiny
first
bundle.
first kid that any of my high school friends have had, because we're all kind of just taking our time here, and
Yeah.
we go over there and he just loves his baby Margaret. He just loves having the little ball like
Oh,
curled
yeah,
up
right
there
there.
too.
That's where they
So
belong. It's right there. Yeah. Yeah, my sister's fiance, he's a big dude. He plays hockey, and he's a real, like, intimidating type of guy that you wouldn't want to tick off. And they have a little boy, and he's the same way. That's right where a baby belongs, right here.
yeah,
Yeah.
I will know someday. We'll know,
Yeah,
find out
someday.
someday.
Yeah. It's right around now is when all of my friends are having babies too. All of them waited till after, they went on and did other things. And I was the first one to have kids basically because they stuck with career and I chose not to.
hmm
Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting though too. So you talk about like the low point, and you were at a low like
Right.
emotionally, and I can imagine. I mean,
Oh,
it.
there's a statistic that goes with that too. It's lipsticks and romance novels. And during depressions, their sales actually go up. Isn't that weird?
I've heard
Everything
that.
else
Yeah,
goes
like
down.
like
Yeah.
entertainment and stuff it goes up
Hmm.
during when
Yeah.
the
When you're
economy is
depressed.
bad
And
because
alcohol.
every
The
yeah.
alcohol, you drink it when you're happy, you drink it when you're sad. Yeah.
Interesting. But no, I mean, now it's kind of looking back. It's like, oh, well, that it's like seems, I don't know, like you obviously made the right decision,
I feel like
and
it did, yeah.
you're doing great and everything with writing and stuff. But I mean, at the time, that must have been like a huge decision. I'm sure you like struggled
It
with that.
was. It was. And even now, like I don't think mom guilt really leaves. It just changes its form. Like I work a lot and I work at home. So sometimes it's difficult to turn it off. And
Hmm.
my kids are
Yeah.
home and I keep my door open, but I'm not blind to the fact that hours and hours and hours will go by. And sometimes I only spend, a couple hours with them. And I was just talking about my schedule. Um, and, I don't get up with my children anymore. I used to be the first thing they saw in the morning and the last thing they saw at night. And I write at night much better and much faster, and the words just flow very easily. So for a long time, I struggled to write at night, get up early, stay with the kids, have family time, do dinner, do all the administration work of being a self-published author, because as you know, that means you're running a business. You're not just the creative side, the author, you're also running a business, and then write at night and then do it
Yeah.
all over again, over and over. And when Sean quit, I tried to maintain that. I tried to maintain a schedule where I was still getting up with the kids and with him, and we would do things together, and then administration work together, as well as like taking care of the kids together. And then the nighttime I was writing again and getting up early again. And it got to the point where Sean said, "Stop getting up with the kids. I'm getting up with them," because I was just so drained and so exhausted and so upset all the time because I felt like I was failing in all aspects.
Hmm.
So my schedule's a bit weird. I get up at 11 a.m., sometimes noon, like when my daughter is going down for a nap. And my son's also a night owl, so he gets up with me. But there's definitely mom guilt there. And like I
Hmm.
said, sometimes I work, all day. So it never really quits, I don't think.
I
It's
think,
hard to find a balance.
yeah, I mean, I honestly, I um, can't
Yeah,
really
you,
say having no kids, but
what
I'm
about
sure
your
that's,
doggy,
well, yeah, the
Sophie?
dog. I mean, I don't leaving the dog at home for long periods of time, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I think you did touch on something that was actually leads into what the next thing that I'm curious about, which is, so you kind of gave us the background on you, since you made the decision to delve into romance writing, and
Hmm.
obviously we're getting a little taste of it's, as I think people out there should know, or maybe they don't know. I don't know that.
If you don't know, go one click one of my books right now because they're fabulous and you're going to love them.
You definitely will.
Yeah,
But uh, but I guess what they don't know is it's a ton of work. Like, I think
it is.
people sometimes underestimate that, and I don't know. I might have underestimated that coming into it, but
Yeah.
it's just like you just think, oh, you have this big book, and you want to publish it. You're like, okay, we're good.
Well,
I
you
remember,
can. You can just hit publish. You can upload it and just hit publish, but it's not going to do anything for
right?
you.
It's just gonna, you got
Yeah.
there's a
It's
lot
going to do
of
what the first book I wrote did. It's just going to sit there
yeah,
and nobody's actually going to, even though some people did buy it, which was amazing because the cover was awful. And my keywords, like for the metadata that you have to put in, I'm pretty sure sex and book like 50 Shades and like those are my keywords. It was awful. I didn't know what I was doing. And it takes a lot of time. And there's a very sharp learning curve. And I feel like I learned a lot of hard lessons really quickly. Um, and I'm still learning. Obviously, I've just transitioned from Kindle Unlimited to Wide, which is a completely different market. So your covers are different. The way you advertise is a little bit different. Your pricing strategy is different. Some people say the publication strategy for timing should also be different, although I'm still playing with some things. So there's a lot to consider, and it's not just writing. I think, yeah, I remember somebody saying, when I said that I feel guilty about not having the time with the kids, and they said, "Well, what are you doing? You work from home." And I said, "I'm working." They're like, "I thought you said you write at night." And I'm like, there's a million things. Like I have a to-do list a mile long right now, like tweaking covers, messaging people to get things, making sure that I have to change a blurb because I think that hints of cheating in the blurb, which there is none, but I think that it's marketing my book the wrong way. And it takes a lot of time to get an eye for that and to grow and to learn to figure out what's right. So yeah, it's intimidating, but you don't start out that way. You start out small and then you grow. Yeah.
yeah. No, it is it's a lot at once, and I know you have like so much information. But I mean, I know you've helped me when I was starting to do more. I guess like last year or so. But let's
I like
see,
talking about it. It's a lot of fun to talk about the business
yeah,
and
no, I think
learn things.
so. I guess this is just my own like opinion, is that as things become more and more automated, just in general, like in the world, we're gonna need more artists and authors, and that things like self-publishing are gonna become more important, just as a way for people to relate to other human beings. I know that's kind of like sounds really philosophical, liberal, artsy, or
A
something.
little bit, yeah.
But I think it's more and more important to have more people that feel confident trying to do that, or getting out there if they have
I
something to
still
say.
don't feel confident.
Yeah, imposter
I don't
syndrome
think you
is
ever
real.
feel confident. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot of insecurity, but you ignore the insecurity and you put it out there so you can grow and learn and share your work with other people.
yeah,
So, but once it's out there, I feel like it's not yours anymore. Like people are going to perceive it and interpret it in a way that their past and their experiences allow it to be interpreted. So, that in and of itself is a very anxious feeling. So,
yeah. 100% agree. Imposter syndrome is real.
it really is. Yeah.
So Will, you're talking about all like the hard work you've put in, and I think just to emphasize this, I personally am very just kind of blown away, honestly, by
Thank you.
all that you've done. You've let's see, since you published your first book, I want to say it was in It was last year, 2016 February. Was that right? As
It's May. May was well, technically, what year is it? Okay, so it's 26. Yeah, so it was 2016. So I had Evie in December.
okay,
And technically, my first book that I published was in February. It was. So technically, it was in February. February, March, April. I ran my learning pen name, which was my maiden name, into the ground. I made my own covers, and Goodreads keeps that. I wrote a book, Game of Thrones styles, with characters interconnecting, and like there were couples, and some they were still having issues in the next. Like it was a mess. I was
interesting.
writing just to write and to
Yeah,
like
yeah. Well, I
yeah, and
think
then
that's an
I
interesting
yeah,
point though too, because I think people sometimes see, and even me, I'm like, oh, you published your first book in,
it was
like
Dirty
it,
Down was in May. Yeah,
yeah, in May, and you're just like, oh, well, that person just published and then just,
I was
just
in the
had
bookstore and
great,
I saw debut author New York Times, and I was like, on that pen name,
yeah.
like is
I was
that her
like that,
first? Yeah.
yeah. I'm like that's not how it works. 'Cause I have one book that I tried writing a book for like 10 months before I
Mhm.
published or wrote Playing Dirty, and that book was just awful. Like I'm never gonna publish it, but
I
it's like
just
the learning
read.
experience,
Yeah.
right?
It is.
Um,
It's a huge learning experience. And none of that work on my maiden name is actually public. Well, it's published still on my maiden name, but it's not doing anything. I think I make like $50 a month. I should probably spend some time in cleaning it up. And I was thinking about doing that for Halloween because it's paranormal romance.
mhm.
So I was, considering like, should I even look at what I wrote? And my first book on, this pen name Willow is Dirty Dom, and people still say it's their favorite. And I look at it and I read it and I'm like, it's not as developed. I don't like, I'm not as good of an author, but the story still grabs me. I went in and I started editing it and I ended up reading. And I was like, okay, if that's my reaction to it and
That's
people are
great.
still
Yeah.
saying that it's their favorite, then it's a good enough story, even though the book and as an author, I wasn't as developed. And so I went back for Halloween to take a look at some of my old writing from this 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago. In January, it'll be 2 years. And I posted snippet, the first chapter of Beauty and the Beast version that I did, and my group went crazy for it. And I was like, this actually isn't that bad. So
Yeah.
you might go back and you might think and feel like it's awful, but if you go back, you might see that it's not that bad.
Well, I think
'Cause-
yeah, you have a good point too. That like, of course, as you write more and more, like you get just your technical writing skills get better, and you're able to describe certain things better. But if you have
and
a
you learn
scene,
that you don't use dialogue correctly or
right?
enough, or yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you
just like
learn
the
that stuff.
balance of the development. But on the other hand, if you have that's my opinion. It's like the most important thing is just if you have a story that grabs people,
Hmm.
from the start. I mean, it doesn't matter if your prose isn't the
Yeah,
best. So that's why,
exactly.
I always encourage people have started asking me writing questions too, which I'm like, wow, this is flattering. You're asking me,
Yeah,
but it's just like just write the story, and if it's just
exactly. You
believe
have
in
an
it.
innate ability, even though sometimes you don't feel like it, like that imposter syndrome comes up.
Yeah,
Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but yeah,
yeah, it is very imposter syndrome is very real. I can't believe you
it
still
is.
have imposter syndrome though. You've
I
like
do. I'm like
hit the USA
terrified
Today
that
bestseller
my
list.
no, I'm like terrified that nobody's gonna like Scarred. So I don't feel good about it until I hear back from at least like a dozen people. So, and then sometimes even then I'm like, but we've worked together for a while. I wonder if you're only saying that not to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, you got to get someone new in there.
Yeah,
Or,
occasionally I need somebody new to like a
yeah,
fresh perspective. Yeah.
no, no, you never want to be like the emperor with no clothes, where people are just telling you, yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
um, cool. So, I want to ask just so a lot of your books are like you have a lot of mafia books or
Yeah.
like darker romance
Hmm.
themes. Um, so I'm just curious, what drew you to darker
Dark romance.
romances? Yeah.
Well, I tried to write for not this past Halloween, but the Halloween before. I had just finished Broken, which like it was torturous to write. It was very emotional, and I tried to write a smutty little short for anthology. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make this like lighthearted and it's going to be something to like cleanse my palate. Because as a reader, if I read something really dark, I would go read something really smutty and short and like just
Hmm.
to,
Yeah.
cleanse my palate and get over that like emotional abuse that that book gives you. And it turned so dark so quickly. It was supposed to be like the boy next door, and it turned into like his parents abused him, and her parents knew, and they just wanted to keep her away, and she tried
So
to help him. Like
so you
it just
tried to write just something smutty and short and sweet, and then it got all dark.
it did not at all. Yeah, it went. I was just like, I was
That's
crying. I was
funny.
like, I feel so bad for this guy. And he's like older, so he felt guilty about having feelings for her. Not that much older, but like, he's like 17, 18, and she's only 15, 16 at the time. And she feels guilty, he feels guilty, and he runs away. And it's years later, they get back. Like, he hears that she's going to be at a Halloween party. So he goes and is
Ooh,
like,
Halloween party. Yeah.
expresses what he felt so long ago. So it still ended up being like a shorter version, but it just goes dark. And I just go dark. And I was talking about this with somebody the other day, with Sue from Love Swept. She's the editor there, and we were talking about it. And I said, I think that the appeal of dark romance, and one of the things that we really like to feel, not only are those, to really be shaken by a book and to make you feel, but to know that it can get very dark. It can get very upsetting. It can get to the point where you don't even have any more hope. And you keep going back to like check reviews to make sure that this has a happily ever after. And they still get it. Like love will persevere and love will conquer it. And they deserve love and they're willing to open themselves up in a very vulnerable state, and they're given love in return. I think that that in and of itself is a very good feeling to have, like that shakes you down to your core. And dark romance can take you there in a way that other romances can't, or other books can't, because you literally at times have no hope, or you can relate to such a deep psychological level of their pain. And it takes you to places where, then you feel if they can have that, then I'm deserving of that. I can have that. If their life is that shitty and mine's not that bad, I'm definitely going to have a happily ever after type of a thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe that's why I do it. Because I'm not like, if you read my books and then you meet me, some of my favorite reviews that I think are funny are, how does this, cheery, bubbly person come up with
Yeah.
these, yeah, fucked up books?
That's what I thought the first time when we met in at RWF. I was like,
Yeah.
I was expecting like a really goth girl, like making. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
not
kidding.
at all.
I didn't. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
I was a dork. I was never even went through my emo stage, so.
yeah. I mean, it is interesting because I I mean, I would never even think to have picked up a dark romance a while ago when I started this journey, but I'm starting to get kind of interested in it. It is, I think, to me, it's
You're really
interesting
good.
to explore like the dark side of a person because I mean, evil
And what they
exists.
can cope. My three books that I like you, so I have like my psychology and neuroscience backgrounds, and one of
Yeah,
the things that I wanted to do, I said I want to write a book about coping and how coping can change you. So I created three situations. One where the villain, so they're all going to go through some sort of tragedy. One where the villain is killed, so justice is perceived, but you still have to live with yourself and your actions and your thoughts and the what happened between those two characters during that tragedy. Even though you supposedly received justice, you still have to live with you, and that can be very difficult to do after that. And then the second one is where the villain was not killed, so there is no justice, or the not that he had to be killed, but there was no justice. And it's how you cope with knowing that something happened and there's a villain still out there, and how that changes you. And then the third is where there is no villain, where something tragic happens and you're just expected to continue to go on with your life and continue to live. So I created three different stories to write those, because I think that mentality, like there's psychology and how it can change you and affect you and make you blind to certain things, can be really powerful. And more importantly, how love is, and the ability to love and opening up and knowing that you deserve love can really help you get through that. So that's my romance side coming through there. But
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's like so. That's something that's coming up. that
Forget
you're
Me Not was
planning?
the first one
Okay.
where two children suffer a tragedy together, and they're split up, and then 20 years later, he goes back for her. And it's about how both of them have coped with the situation and their actions, and how neither of them is really quite right. And they both need each other basically for acceptance and love and understanding, but in very different ways. And the second one, I don't want to tell anybody. Sorry, that would be a spoiler alert. I can't name the other two. I apologize. It's a very big spoiler alert for the books if I give away the other two.
Okay.
So
Fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah. But the first one's Forget Me Not, so that one doesn't destroy anything if I tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Everyone should go grab Forget Me Not if you haven't. It was
Yes.
that was a USA Today bestseller, right?
hmm
That was good. Yeah.
I think it hit 67 on the list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. And for everyone just out there, like that is very impressive to do that as
Thank
going to
you.
indie author, like just
Yeah.
having recently kind of like you're hybrid considered, right?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
no, I'm all wide now. I
All
started
wide.
KU, which is Kindle Unlimited, and then I moved all wide. And my series with Lauren Landish, the Highest Bidder series, was the last one to be moved over.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
it's done now. So all of them are wide. Yeah. And wide means available on all bookstores.
Okay.
Yeah. And in bookstores too. I'm now in bookstores, and that's awesome. So
Yeah, that's like
yeah.
that's a quick turnaround. So
Yeah.
what is your like process when you're going from like book to or like rough draft or raw idea to rough
Oh.
draft to final
Yeah.
draft?
So, like with that third book, I guess I can tell you what the third book is because it's not really it's not a spoiler really, more about her coping. I had the idea that I wanted to know how you would deal with a tragedy, how you would live knowing that this had happened, knowing that there is no justice that's coming and there's no ability for you to fix or change it. And I thought of this story, but it was a true tragedy. And obviously can't tell you what it is, but it's just upsetting that you want hope in this story, and you create things to help cope with that, with the fact that there is no hope. So you'll create something while the tragedy is occurring. It's hard to talk about it without telling you exactly what's going on, but I don't want to give away any spoilers. But the fact is that it's just simply a tragedy. And when that happens, oh, my computer's at 6%. Give me just 1 second for me to grab my charger that fell on the floor. My computer's going to be all wobbly, and you're going to see my ceiling. Sorry.
That's okay.
Ugh. Okay. And obviously, so I'm thinking about this, and I was like, that's not what I want. That's not what I want for this story. It wasn't my goal, but the story itself was very moving because it does show you how you cope with when you're going through a tragedy. And I wanted to write a story that happened after. So I'm in Dunkin' Donuts, right? This is right after Indies invade Philly. I picked up a cold, so I was coughing, and I needed to go to the doctor because the cough was lasting like 3 weeks, and I couldn't actually talk without coughing. It was that bad. And obviously, I had to go stop at Dunkin' Donuts before going. So I'm in Dunkin' Donuts, and I'm thinking up this story, which is very tragic. And then I thought, what if my heroine is reading this book, not realizing what it is, and she had just suffered a tragedy? And she sees a lot of the reflections of how she's coping and trying so desperately to find something to cling to, where she can either be angry at it, where she can find somebody to blame, she can try to deny certain things are happening. And what if she is reading this while the hero, who's also coping and going through his own things, but while he's trying to bring her back and show her like we can do this together, and that as long as we love each other, it's okay to love again. Basically, she's of the mindset where if she were to forget, if she were to move on, if she were to love and accept love again, that it would be a tragedy, and it would mean that she's not a good person after what had happened. They lose their daughter. It happens in the beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler. But they lose their daughter, and she's trying to, understand that well, she's not trying to. He's understanding that we can move on and be happy together and still live and take care of our other daughter. And it's okay. It's not hurting the memories of their lost daughter. Whereas she and a lot of people can't get past that. So I'm in Dunkin' Donuts and that idea hit me and I'm just bawling. Like, it was embarrassing. I stayed in line though and got my coffee. But I'm like just bawling my eyes out, thinking about these scenes, thinking about this woman who is falling into this book because she's so desperate to hold on to something and to try to not only fall into fantasy, like how I said, when I was at a low point, I went into romance, but the cover is removed from the book and there's a twist later and I can't tell you what happens in the book. But it was just, so that like hit me out of nowhere, was how I can use one idea and reflect it into this idea to show her development and have this kind of hit her hard. And so I go up to my doctor's appointment and I'm still crying because the scenes come like in little batches, you know, where you're learning new things about how it can develop. And
Definitely. I think definitely like the scenes, this happens to me too. And I've started more and more, the more you like think about something, if you are like, just when you're doing something random is when the insight comes. Like, it's not when you're sitting at the computer, like trying to get it.
It's when you're trying to sleep, when you're doing laundry, when you're doing the dishes. Yeah, that's when it hits you. Or when you're driving to the doctor's. Yeah, so I get like, so I'm at the doctor's like still teary-eyed, you know, so I'm trying to like stop and like take care of myself, but I'm writing all of this on my phone in notes. And I get into the back room and one of the ladies comes in and she's like, here's a test for depression. Don't worry, we give it to everybody. And I was like, I'm lying on this. I am not, because, you know, I'm a dark romance author. I cry a lot. I was like, there is no way they're going to give me like an IV of like Xanax like before I even leave if I answer this appropriately. But I just started cracking up laughing. I was like, I swear I don't usually cry in public. Like, usually it's behind a computer screen.
Just like, this girl is.
But sometimes it does come while you're writing, though. Like, sometimes it does. Like, I surprise myself sometimes. I'll have like a really rough outline where it's only 2 sentences, and then I get into the scene and I realize how something can work. So, yeah, but the overall arching, that's how it happens. In batches when you're doing something mundane and it hits you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when, that's when the ideas come, for sure. So then after you finish, like so you get it, you have your idea, and then you put it down, and then you just.
So I have an editor who I work with, Donna. It's my beta editor, and I'm really insecure while I'm writing, like really insecure. But I have a motto where you can't edit a blank page, and if you get stuck on one part, move to another part or work backwards in that chapter. Because you're stuck for a reason, but holding all of the creativity and holding up the plot over like, how is this conversation going to start? Or how, you know, something like that. If you can move forward and see your characters in the other scenes or at the end of that scene, then I feel like you should keep going and keep moving.
Yeah.
So,
that's funny. This is something funny. I once read by some like writing guru or whatever, but he said, he's like, if you can't figure out how to start your book or like your next chapter, pick up the nearest book within like arm's length to you, turn to page 44, and the first line on that page is like your first line.
It's just use whatever you can and put them in a room. I like to start backwards. I like to, because you know how you want your chapter to end. You know how you want it to feel. So if you can start backwards and write that last paragraph, and then, well, what happened before? Well, what happened before? Well, what happened before? And then you get up to where you were stuck. And either you stay stuck and you hit it on your read through, or you move forward and figure it out.
That's super. So you write the ending sometimes.
Well, so that's a chapter if I'm stuck. If I'm stuck on something, I'll go to the end of the chapter and write backwards. But I do actually write the ending before the majority of it, because some of the criticism I got in my earlier books, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about learning to be a better author, said that my endings were rushed. And a lot of that is true. So one of the ways that I figured out how to fix this is I'll write my first couple of chapters and I'll make notes about my powerful scenes that I've had so that I don't forget them. And then I write the ending. I write about 2 to 3 chapters in the end, and I write my epilogue. Or sometimes I save my epilogue, just because if you get to a hard part, it's nice to go and write an epilogue. So you're like, it's going to be okay. Yeah. So then I write my first chapter, write my last few, and then I do a rough outline in between and connect the dots. So, and as I'm going, I'll send chunks to my beta editor. So she'll read as I'm going and say, hey, this, continuity error here, continuity error there. That way, as I'm going, first I have the confidence that it's not crap, because Donna is very blunt, and she's told me before, like, this is anticlimactic, or no, this doesn't make sense, or this makes him very unlikable. I'm not feeling this, like, very blunt. So if she's keeping up with me and everything's going well, it gives me confidence to continue. And then I send it to 2 other content and developmental editors, and I get their feedback, and I compile that, and then I send it to a polisher editor at the same time as I send it to my ARC team. When I send it to my 2 editors, I also send it to my betas. So I just got notes back from the one content developer, and I made those corrections and sent it back with the corrections to the other content editor. So I'm waiting on those and my beta feedback before I can send it out to the ARC for Scarred. But yeah, so a lot of people have their hands on my work within a week time. Like, they all work very quickly, and by the time I finish my first draft, I do a read through in a day or 2, and then I send it out, and it's nonstop. And I'm very anxious until I hear back. Like, very anxious.
Nice. Yeah, Eddie, I mean, what you said, about the rushed endings, I've gotten that too. So that's something I'm trying to work on. I think it's
Try
kind of
doing that. Try writing the ending,
yeah, no,
because just like the Sweet Tragedy, when I was talking about, all their difficulties, you know how it needs to end. Like, you know what is missing and where the disconnection is. So you should be able to write that last chapter when problems are solved and they're coping with it together. You should be able to write that before, and not needing anything else. So as
yeah,
long as you know the main conflicts, you should be good.
yeah, definitely. No, I really like that. And I think too, I mean, I always just compare. It's like writing has, to me, um, it's like a lot of things that if you just keep doing it, if you just don't give up, like, you're gonna get better at it too. It's
Yeah,
like if you're a slow racer and you finish slow, you just have to keep doing it
keep
and keep
going. Yeah.
trying to work on the ending.
And that's why I don't stop when I get stuck either. You just got to keep going, because you're going to figure out what's missing if you just keep going and what was holding you up. So I've never done a read through where I have missing chunks that I wasn't able to fill. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So we are getting probably we're at about 47 minutes right now. So,
Woo!
um, but we
That's like twice as long as what you wanted, isn't
yeah,
it?
no, that's good. This is really eye opening. So I think it's
So it's
great.
good.
But
Okay.
I do have one more question though.
Okay. I'll
Um,
try to keep it short.
well, all right. Let's see. So who are your? I lied. I might have one more after this. But who are your
Okay.
influences as a writer?
Um,
Like,
well, my influencers as a writer, Ella James is definitely one. I read Sloth when I was a reader, and it's amazing. She trampled on my heart and then was like, put it back to my chest with a staple gun. I was like, just kidding. So first of all, I love her work. And second of all, I almost reached out to her when I started writing, but I didn't. I resisted. I feel I feel insecure, and I'm also afraid of being kind of rejected or being emotionally hurt from authors I've read before, that I feel like, she'll always be up here to me. So I'm always afraid to reach out to somebody who I feel like I know. Um, and she literally the next day, it was because she'd posted in JD Hawkins' Facebook group, and he did, and he tagged her. And I was like, oh my God, I know somebody who knows her. And then she messaged me the next day about posting in the Begging for Bad Boys, my Facebook group. And I was just, beside myself. And we have so much in common. And hearing her, she's read my books, I've read her books, and to have a mutual conversation about how much we love each other's books, there's so much motivation and strength that can come from that, from just having someone who, like, you know that they know what's good because they wrote it. And that, like, it doesn't get better than that. It doesn't get better than having a top 10 favorite author tell you that your work is good.
Yeah.
And, like, so that right there is amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to say her. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So, yeah,
What's the
wow,
next one?
that's pretty good. So, all right, this is
Yeah.
it's the last question, but it's just, so where's Willow Winters going next year? What are you doing?
Oh,
What's
well,
the
I
plans?
have this in some secrets. So my four P's for this year, my New Year's resolutions were progress, not perfection. And I think I did that one really well because I'm a perfectionist and very hard on myself, and I've tried to lighten up a little bit. And moving wide was actually really good for that because when you move wide from KU, your expectations drop. Like, people don't expect you to to be able to do well. So that was a nice easy fit. And then patience, still working on that. Yeah, that one's probably my worst one. And then to be present because I work a lot, and even though I was there with my family, a lot of times I wasn't actually there.
Mm-hmm.
And hiring Sophie and having a PA that I can really rely on really helped me with that also. So those are my four P's from last year. And this year, I was just talking to Alta Hensley, and she said that her goal is to do 100% everything, to double everything. I don't think I can do that, and that thought is like anxiety. So
Is
I'm
to
going to
do
try
100% everything?
100, like double her Facebook page likes, double
So
her newsletter,
so
double her
200%.
word count. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Or plus 100. What is, yeah, to, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever.
double
Yeah.
output. Wow, that's
So I'm going to try for that, but don't hold me to it. But the two goals that I always have, and that's what I told her, I'm just going to try to stick with the same two goals I always have. One, write books that I love that are on market. That on market part is the business side. And two, grow my reader base and try to reach new readers.
yeah.
So I'm definitely going to do that. That's my goals. And I'm going to do that I have She Asked For It coming out in January, which is a mind fuck. And I hope people really like it. It's a romance still.
I know people are gonna love this to answer this question that from coming from you. What is
Okay.
like the one top piece of advice you'd give someone who is like, say, a reader who has maybe dabbled a little bit and they're like, I'm kind of writing a little bit of something and I just don't know where to get started, or what advice would you give them?
Okay, so I have three pieces of advice. The first one is don't stop writing. You're going to be shit on. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like you're a phony. You're going to hate some of the things that you write. You're going to feel like you're failing in everything. There's going to be so much negativity that sometimes you just want to quit and get your computer and write a chapter. Do not stop writing. Just don't do it. That's the best thing you can do, is to just keep writing and keep doing your thing. The second piece is have patience with yourself, but know what you're doing and pay attention. It's not okay to fail in some areas. Well, that's not wrong. Okay. Or that's not right. It's not wrong also, but it's also not right. You're going to fail, but take note of what happens and try to correct yourself. And even if it takes a little bit of time, like I learned that I messed up with metadata stuff, and it took me time to go backwards and fix things and make sure everything was up to date. But I did fix them. Like you've got to pay attention because you're running a business. You're not just an author, and you need to be aware of that. So don't stop writing and pay attention. And then the third part is be proud of yourself, because this is very hard. Like, you're going to write a novel. You're going to put something that's in your subconscious, and you're going to bring it to life and be able to share that with people. Not everybody can do that. But not everybody has a calling to do that either. So hold on to that and keep your happy, because it should make you happy to do it. And if you find yourself not happy, consider why, but don't you dare stop writing. You better keep writing and finish that story, because if it's a story that's not making you happy, consider why. I'll just say, yeah, consider you're happy and make it a priority. Yeah. So that's the advice I would have.
Gotcha.
Is that good advice?
Yeah,
I think it's
absolutely.
okay. Yeah,
I
it's
think,
good. Okay.
yeah, I think that's fantastic. So, yeah,
It's very broad. Yeah,
it's, I mean, I think just to keep writing is the key, and
it really
that's
is.
like the number. I mean, if
I
anything
almost
else,
quit
it's,
before Willow
yeah,
Winters almost didn't exist. I almost quit
yeah.
halfway into writing Dirty Dom. Yeah.
I mean, in spite of everything, you could, if you know, if you do marketing but you don't have a book, you have nothing. But if you
Right.
do, if you write the book but you don't do marketing, I mean, you still do have the book. Like, and when
And
it
it'll
comes
still
down
make
to
you
it,
money later on.
yeah,
Yeah.
writing is the most important part. You can't, uh,
Yes.
you can't not do it. So, all
But
right,
be conscious of the fact that you're running a business. There are so many people who don't seem to be conscious of that and think that if their book is good enough, it's going to succeed, even if they don't consider the business aspects. And that's wrong. Like my first book that did
mm-hmm,
nothing. I'm the
yeah,
same person I was then, and those books aren't selling. And like my maiden name, pen name, those books are still published, but they're not doing nearly as well. And it's, you have to learn and grow, but yeah, just be conscious of what you're doing and pay attention. I probably
awesome,
say that a lot, don't I? My dad told me a lot growing up. Pay
yeah.
attention.
I mean, yeah, it's easier said than done though, for sure.
It is. It is. Yeah.
But all right. So what books do you have out right now that you want to plug?
Well, Damaged, I think, is my best book that I've ever written. It's very emotional and it's based in New York City with powerful men and women. And this man in particular is a bad boy from Brooklyn who never got over his ways because he didn't have to. He got a job as a fixer, hanging out and basically babysitting high-end clients. And he got married, fell in love and got married, and you see their romance and how it develops. But the series, the Sins and Secret series, is all about how even if your love is meant to be and you do truly love each other, your past can absolutely destroy you and tear you apart, and your sins and secrets will always come back. And the first thing that they go after are the people who you love.
Got some chills
So,
there listening
yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
Seriously,
It's,
that's
I really love the book, and it's really emotional and in the best way. Um, and it's a duet, and I just finished the sequel of it, and that's the one that I'm anxiously awaiting feedback on their conclusion. But at the end of their story, my heart was like racing out of my chest. So I hope it's the same for everybody else, and that you get that good feeling at the end. Yeah.
yeah, awesome. Well, Willow Winters, everybody, go check her out. Just go to Amazon or iTunes or your preferred
Yeah. Bookstore.
digital bookstore or real bookstore.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if they don't have Willow Winters, ask them why not.
Yes.
In the real bookstores, but they're all over Amazon, and so check them out. So, all right,
Thanks
Willow.
for
Well,
having
thank you
me.
so much for talking today. And
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is awesome. I always love to talk.
yeah, I know I could talk. We could probably
We
talk.
could
We could
talk
probably do
forever.
like a whole
Yeah.
nother round
We
about
literally could
something
just keep
else.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, we could just keep talking about this stuff. But anyways, I think people are gonna enjoy and get a lot out of, especially maybe burgeoning writers, but also hopefully
Oh,
interesting for readers just to see, what's
oh,
going through the
yeah.
mind
Get a peek behind the writers of romance.
behind
Yes.
the dark
Hey.
romance. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right, Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mickey. How was that?
Second, let me stop.
Okay. I'm gonna